Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to the Northwoods Kindred Podcast. I'm Bodvar, the chieftain and godi of the Northwoods. I'm glad you guys decided to join me again. Episode number 12. We're on a roll here. This one's going to be one I'm going to kind of cover a topic it was on my Discord today, and people were curious about it, so I said, well, I'm going to shoot a podcast anyway. I'll add that in. And we're going to talk about a phenomenon that's been affecting kind of Asatru in general in America for quite a while, and it is the disappearing godi. So I talked to a lot of people in the Asatru community at large about their kindreds, about their practice, about getting in touch with the gods and goddesses, how to lead a kindred. And I think one of the most common things that I hear is this phenomenon that somebody had a mentor or a godi or somebody who was teaching them the ropes and they just poof ghosted them. Now, I know that in some cases that ghosting is the product of a death or a move, but in some cases it's not. In some cases the godi just decided that it was more than he could handle or didn't jibe with those people. I think that's probably not the right way to break off a kindred relationship, even if you're just building it, but to each their own, I suppose. But in any event, it's a kind of a common thing. So there are some kindreds that are left to just try and figure it out. Like, what do? We don't have a godi. Let's just figure it out. And so the disappearing godi trick is a common one. And one of the things I'm trying to do it's on this YouTube channel, but kind of more on the mainline video series and less about the podcast, is I'm putting together a package right now to start educating kindred leadership to be godi or godar. We'll probably put together a module for your volas or your viki or little specialty, even a glenveria, which is what we call our gatekeeper or our security person. You can call it whatever you want. But those jobs within a kindred need to be filled by someone. It could, in a lot of cases, be a lot of the same people filling the same jobs. But we're going to do a little course and teach the godi how to fill those roles when need be, as well as to fill those roles permanently by finding the right personalities from their members to put in there. So that's going to be a big part of the experience that we're trying to put together here for this next year on YouTube. And I know we're partway through the year already. It's been kind of a rough start. I don't know if you guys have had a rough start, but it is important to understand that everybody's going through something. I know that we see it on the socials a lot, this person complaining about this or somebody's complaining about that. But there's a lot of people who just silently go through things. And maybe that's you, maybe that's me. But when we're dealing with other people, especially in our own community, in the Asatru community, let's try and have a little compassion and just kind of imagine that people are going through some stuff. And one of those things that some people are going through is that their godi, flew the coop. So we're going to work on that with them as well. And so what that does is that means that whoever's running the kindred has been essentially voluntold to do it, or I guess voluntold is the word for it. And what because what can you do, right? You have a kindred, you're starting to meet, you're starting to do, maybe you get one or two rituals under your belt, and then poof, you have no one to lead these rituals. Hope you paid attention. So we spent last year on the Northwoods Kindred YouTube channel. So if you're watching this on YouTube, in order to not confuse you too much, this is primarily a podcast. So it's out on RSS feeds as a podcast. So just kind of playing the game here. So if you don't know, we do have a YouTube channel, and on that channel is a lot of instructional videos and just some informational stuff, but it's really centered around running a kindred, performing rituals, seasonal celebrations. Even if some of those celebrations are heavy UPG based, we try to make that as clear as possible. We're not living 1,000, 1,500 years ago. We're not native to the way the Scandinavians do things. We're just here in America trying to put the pieces together as best we can, and that's what we're trying to do with our website, is to with our our YouTube channel, is to just kind of provide a resource for new pagans who don't have any place else to turn. I see it on the socials all the time, or on the other social medias where people are asking questions and they're just being ridiculed or tore up for some reason. I don't understand why we can't be more supportive of each other. And then even so, more recently, in a lot of cases, we're getting kind of shredded here and there by some Scandinavians too. And I will tell you that I talk to Scandinavians daily, various people from Iceland to Norway. And I'll tell you that the ones that are really hardcore, telling you that you don't rate or you don't deserve to be there or anything, are not representing the Scandinavia as a whole, or those various countries' populations as a whole. I think for the most part, those are kind of the outliers. We have people here we don't like trying to represent our communities. They have people they don't like that's trying to represent their communities, and it seems like both of them seem to get equal press when it's necessary. So let's have a little compassion for our neighbors on the other side of the pond too, when we're trying to put these things together. But I keep kind of slipping back and forth. I really kind of just want to talk about the godi experience a little bit, and we've started shooting the series for the godi training, which is going to be great. Like I hope you guys really like it, and it's going to be probably a little rough around the edges at the beginning. Of course, everything takes time to refine it. This podcast is in its infancy. It's going to take time to refine. Of course, the YouTube channel is about a year old, so we're getting there, but we're still trying to refine everything and streamline everything. I have a tendency to talk a lot, which is why this podcast is really good, because I can make a quick little page of notes and then talk to you for about an hour, and that works to my benefit. But that doesn't work well on a YouTube video, although, occasionally a 20 or 30 minute video is exactly what the doctor ordered. In a lot of cases, a 20 or 30 minute video is too long and you lose the message in that video. So we're working on streamlining it. Stick with us. The information is there. It's just sometimes you gotta draw it out of me. But I'm working on my flaws too for that. But for the godi school training, that's a whole new different. And I'm saying godi school because that's the most descriptive term I can come up with, but that's not totally what it is. I'm just really trying to lean into our motives here and help to develop the Asatru kindred, not in our image, but by showing the way that we do things, and especially to the godis, some of the pitfalls that I've managed to avoid and some that I've fallen into, and some things they can do to avoid the traps, or at least be aware that something leading up to a situation could be potentially harmful if it's not addressed correctly. There's no reason I shouldn't share the benefit of some of that experience. There's a lot of organizations that we have, national and even some international organizations, that do offer some kind of clergy training programs. But a lot of those are, of course, heavily dependent on your participation in their program or in their organization. Some of that comes with dues. Some of that comes with obligations to the program. Of course, just maybe money to sign up for the program. And I understand it. I don't begrudge anyone for charging for their work. I just don't know if that's the best model in today's environment, because in an environment like we have today, if you charge too much, then nobody's going to pay it. They're just going to go out and seek the information on their own, which is understandable. For a long time, we didn't have things like these YouTube channels. We had organizations for sure, and we had meetings, national things, assemblies, moots, Ren fairs. Those were the kind of places where we gathered in and learned from each other. With so much information online, especially when a lot of it is false or just poorly interpreted, or just downright ripped off from Marvel, it's a very confusing landscape. So I wanted to help with the program and try and help the newly minted godi figure out how they can do some reliable research without, of course, diving into the Library of Congress and falling asleep reading some of those boring old texts, but how you could develop the things that you need. You could perform those life rituals and life ceremonies for your people. Lots of things like that. So the way godis, a lot of this I've already explained in the first in the first video, which is not published yet, but I guess you can get a double tap to show you how important it really is. But a lot of godis, there's only a couple of ways that I can think of to train a godi. Now, the first of which is the method that I took, not by any choice, mind you. It was just happenstance that it worked out that way, that I fell in line with an honorable kindred with a good godi who'd been at it for a long time, when there weren't a lot of people who'd been at it for a long time. And we became really, really close friends and kinsmen. And then over the years, I learned how to do this kind of stuff by having his ear whenever I needed it. So it worked out really well. And then some of my experiences got to transfer to him and back and forth. And now we kind of, we've been friends for so many years. Now we just kind of mentor each other through the process. And we're both constantly asking each other for advice or help on this or that sort of a project. So the mentorship model is the primary model by which most godi get their training. And it's, if you take that model and that's how you learn how to do this, you have to learn it from someone that you not only respect, but someone whose kind of goals and outlook on the religion and the people is the same as yours. But if you find the right match, then there's a good chance that it'll be a beneficial relationship for both the mentor and the mentee. But of course, I come from an environment in the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps is heavily a mentor and a mentorship, society. Everybody seems to have a mentor, either one up, or you're either mentoring the guy below you, or you're being mentored by the one above you. And it's a really good model, and it works well. So it's something that I believe in anyway, is that mentorship model. And I was fortunate to find someone who's my ideas and everything aligned with, that was able and willing to mentor me and knew what he was doing. That's a tall order. That's a hard thing I would expect for most people to come up with. So there are other models. Some of those models are national organizations. Some of them have been authorized or whatever by the U.S. government or the tax department or whoever does it to get the certification or the authority to certify clergy for their organizations. Now, we don't have that. I don't know if we'll get that. I don't know if we even need that. So I'm just going to show people how to do it, not really concerned about certifying it, because would you rather have a piece of paper that says you are a certified godi, or would you rather know what you're doing? I guess you can have one or the other. But I don't want to bag on those other organizations because I haven't been through their training. Okay, all I have is 20 plus years of mentorship by another godi who happens to align with me. And if you don't, go through we got close to 300 videos in our YouTube. Go through it. If our thoughts and our mindsets don't really align well, then I guess move along. That's fine. You're not going to break my heart. I get it. It's an absolutely personal path, and everybody does things differently. And I'm not trying to make anybody do it my way. So those national organizations will have some sort of a process for people to go through, which could be signing up for it. You probably got to get approval in that process. After approval, you're going to have to probably do some modules, probably have to pay some money, or at least join the organization to be a part of it. Some of that comes with some oaths and other weird things that maybe you do or don't want to get involved with. So that model isn't my ideal model. I've gone to some of the organizations and asked, like, hey, can I go through your program just so I can either recommend it or not? And nobody would let me. So, which is odd, but okay. Some I didn't go talk to because there are a lot that I don't even want to be associated with. But that's not the point. The point is that there are other people who think like this, and they may not want that either. They may just want to start a kindred and do their own thing and never even have any kind of contact with other pagans or anything. That's perfectly fine. That's what this is about. This is about making kindred leadership functional so that we can usher our collective community into the future. So it's kind of a nice thought experiment to think about. Okay, we don't think of where we're at today with this technology. Like, I have a pretty wicked little setup right here with recorders and cameras and stuff like that, and lights, tons of lights all over the place. And this is all built on a technology And these technologies were built on technologies that came before them and before them and before then. So the biggest problem that we have is, and I mean we as a community of Norse pagans, especially in America, the biggest problem we have is there's no consistency and there's no transfer of information. It seems to be that one person finds the way and then scribbles it out with a crayon in the best they can and then just tries to make it work, as opposed, and that's the biggest complaint. That's the biggest complaint that a lot of us have, is that because of the time and the illiteracy of our ancestors, there's very few that was written down during the time when we really want to know the most. Now, granted, there was a whole lifetime, 1,000 years between the last pagan and the first pagan again. Of course, I'm being a little, over dramatic about that, but there's about 1,000 years since the end of the Viking Age, and then, coming into our modern era and our modern kind of technological revolutions. So we can see that, there's been a lot of growth and a lot of new experiences that have happened in 1,000 years. So we can't live today completely and totally trying to mirror the way things were back in the end of the Viking Age. We can't even live, truthfully, we can't even live the way they lived a couple hundred years ago. We can get a little closer, but a regular old farmstead here producing, some animals for slaughter, or, some animals for food and growing a garden and stuff, doesn't even really compare to the lifestyle of, people 1,000 years ago. So we can live as close to the land as we want. And it would be very hard to mimic the lifestyle, because we're not talking about one family. We're talking about communities, large communities that live that way. It'd be a very hard thing to mimic unless it was sort of a living history experiment, which would be fantastic. But we can't base a religion on that. So as with the technology, each piece of technology opened a door for the next piece of technology. Somebody didn't wake up in the morning and say, "Oh, look, an iPhone 7. There were, there were iterations before that, and some of them kind of stupid and clunky. That's where we're at with Asatru. We're in an early iteration where it's kind of stupid and clunky, and where we can't really agree on anything. So everybody's just willy-nilly making it up as they go along, and that's fine. But I think that when we sort of kind of get it figured out for ourselves, we have a duty to pass that forward, to teach other people, to train into the future so that their practice can build on the practices that came before them and not have to reset every half a generation. Because that's essentially what we're doing. Every half a generation is resetting the clock on how to do all of this stuff because we're not passing that information forward. So that's really our goal here. Let's make it a matter of record. We'll put it in the public domain and we'll pass it on forward. That was kind of long-winded. I tend to do that, which is why this is a great platform for me. And the third way that the Godis that I've seen get their job is they're simply by default. So we did have the mentorship model. We have the going out and learning from one of these organizations. But you got to also remember, and again, I've covered all of this in the next video that's coming out, but don't skip it, please, because there's some good information in there too. But you got to understand that the organizational check in the box for a Godi is only really valid within that organization. Just like your title of Godi is really only valid either within that organization and also within the kindred that you lead. I would not use the title if I wasn't actually Godiing for a kindred. I also don't know if that's a word, but we'll have to look it up. And so the third sort of model is just being tossed into it. And that is kind of what we're talking about here, which is either the disappearing Godi or just, in a lot of cases, I've seen this, people just want to build a kindred. And they don't have a Godi and they don't know a Godi. So they just build a kindred and they're like, I'll do it. I'll do the best I can. And they buy a book or they watch a video and they're like, let's try it. Let's make it happen. So really our goal here is to just provide a resource to make that easy. There's a lot of great YouTubers out there. Great factual information. If you want historical stuff, if you want all modern UPG stuff, if you just want to pontificate about the lore, there are wonderful channels for all of that. There's some like super new age stuff that it doesn't really explain stuff, but it's really artistically done. There's so many ways to enjoy the information online, but nobody's trying to strengthen the bonds of a kindred by creating kindred leadership. So we just figured we'd try and fill that hole for you. And if some people appreciate it and some don't. Given those three models, we decided that we would try to focus this as a sort of a miniature mentoring model, because there is limited access to me personally, especially if you join our Discord. Go join our Discord. It's in the link tree. And whether you're listening to this, anywhere you're listening to this where it's got show notes, there should be some links below that will take you to some of the things I'll talk about here, as well as my link tree. And you can just bounce the link tree and see everything else that's there. So, that's there for you. We have kind of stuff spread around on the web anyway. I say we, but it's me and Scoble for the most part. The Kindred is a big part of the Kindred, but they're not a big part of all this digital mumbo jumbo. They all got day jobs. They don't have time for this noise. So we can replace the hardship that is being thrown into the position and just give at least enough knowledge to be competent and functional and develop your own path, then I think that we will have accomplished our mission pretty good. So I'm going to want to give an example. I've been mentoring personally with the Iron Ravens Kindred on my local Air Force base. Now, Iron Ravens Kindred is kind of an interesting story. I might have told it already, but he was getting some flack online. We went and met. We hit it off. I've been mentoring him for 6 or 8 months now, I suppose, and he's got a good, thriving kindred on the base. Now, the models are different, though, so understand that a base kindred or a military kindred, if they call it a kindred even, because some of them use different names and whatnot, the model is different because it's not like they have the ability to scrutinize anyone. If they're going to get the approval of the base and the chaplain and the commanders to organize these events, everyone is welcome. That's not necessarily the case with a physical kindred. You can do that when you're organizing a gathering on the lawn of a public space, or even at the chapel, if it's indoor, if it's inclement weather or whatever. Because yes, pagans would have use of the chapel, and military chapels aren't like others. In a lot of cases, there's no religious insignia anywhere in the chapel building, not even a big crucifix on the wall. The room is set up for the users. So if they're doing Catholic Mass, they have their tools and toys. If they're doing Protestant Mass, or if they're doing a pagan or a Wiccan ceremony, everything is set up differently. It's a house of the people more so than a house of the god, on a base, which is, utility. That's the way it should be. So the model with a military kindred is they have to take everybody, or they're not legit at all. But there's no risk in that, because, what's the worst case that's going to happen is somebody might get a little out of control, but they still honor their chain of command. So there's still, higher ranking individuals on or off duty. They're still in charge. So there's a structure and an order, and they don't have to worry about the potentiality of bringing in someone who would cause harm to their kindred, or their, or worse in some cases, because they're not just pulling people off the street. They're pulling active duty or reserve service members who have been vetted. They have ID cards, security clearances in a lot of cases. So these are good people that need very little control, supervision, and vetting, but they do still need some form of leadership. And that leadership would organize and orchestrate the gatherings and make those kind of a thing work. So we'll call this the Iron Raven model for kindred management. I've watched their leader, and I'm cautious about using anything more than those superficial names, because people have their own private lives. So their leader has actually taught me a little bit, because he was very good about delegating responsibility for the kindred. So that's why I kind of wanted to bring it up, because the model is really important. And that he didn't go back and say, okay, now I'm the by default godi. I have to do the ritual, plan the events, find the spaces, get people there, get the meat, do the thing, do the other thing, and then take all the responsibility. He's like, no, I am an NCO. You are the Gidya. You are the security. This is your job. This is your job. This is your job. This is your job. Make this happen. And and everybody made it happen. Everybody had a job. They had a purpose, which is really great because it gets people coming back. Like you want to come back. You want to show that you did your job and you did a good job. So he delegated those roles out. And of course, we already do that here, but we just sort of did it intuitively, probably because we're mostly former military anyway. But I think we just kind of intuitively just started tasking people out and doing roles. But I don't think that's always the case in an Asatru kindred. So if it's not, it's maybe something you want to consider. And so we've taken it a little bit farther in our kindred, and we have designated 2 leiknir. So our leiknir are our herbalists, our healers. And every kindred gathering, our leiknir gives us a 15, 20-minute presentation on some beneficial plant that we can use for medicine or food. So the leiknir he gets to spend 2 months planning the class and then deliver. So each gathering, one of the 2 will give a presentation on a different plant. And by having 2, that means that they can work together. They can help to develop us. If we do any plant walks or harvests, then we have 2 sets of eyes on the process and on the product at the same time. We thought it would be real beneficial because then one of our leiknir can work very diligently on their class for the next gathering, while the other one's working on a class for 2 gatherings down the road. And then they can flip-flop like that and really have a lot of time to do the research and implement it into their class. And in some cases, we'll work with starts, so we can have our own little personal plants. There's just so many different things that they can do collectively or individually that takes the pressure off of both of them, because it is it's an important job, but it's sort of a difficult job too. If you've ever tried to train people or teach people about plants and plant medicines and plant foods and other uses for plants like cordage and whatnot, those are difficult things to teach because in a lot of cases people see a plant as a plant. They don't see the intricacies of the leaf and the petal and the stem and the roots and the environment that it's growing in and the time of the year. They just don't see those sort of things. So those have to be taught. And so it's really nice to have 2 leiknir. And we can only do that because we had 2 people that were skilled in it and happy to do it. So all of those things matter, because if they don't want to do it or if they don't really have a lot of interest in it, then it's just bullying, I guess. Like if you're just like, hey, you're a plant guy, go learn about plants. That wouldn't really work out very well. It wouldn't be very nice. So delegate those roles according to, how people live. What are they interested in? And then when they do, absolutely give credit where credit is due. Compliment the work. Be present for the work. And that's probably the biggest insult, is when someone is asked to do something, and when they perform that task, they do it, they teach it, they provide it or whatever, is they get no recognition for it, or worse, you're not present during the time. Like if someone's giving you a class on plants and you're just flipping through Facebook and TikTok, you're not giving them their attention. You're not honoring their sacrifice and their work and putting this thing together to make your life better, to make you more complete. If you can't do that, then I would refrain from assigning those kind of roles in the first place. The point is to really illustrate the difference between the mentorship model in real life and the mentorship model that we can provide online. Now, I can put out 2, maybe 3 videos, including the podcast, a week, and then a couple of little snippets and shorts to just kind of get attention. At best, if they're half-hour videos, you're going to pull in a long podcast and a couple of good videos with half hour to an hour maybe of total watch time. If that's the case, I just want you to kind of wrap your head around the idea that we would be sitting in the backyard for 2 hours having conversations. Think of the amount of information that you could transfer in a shorter period of time, say a week or 2 weeks, as opposed to the amount of information that I can transfer by making videos about very specific topics. It can be more organized. So the mentorship model physically will be obviously more thorough, and I'm going to continue working with not only the base kindred, but I'm also going to be working with my own kindred and develop competent leaders in my own kindred, so they can one day, if they move or transition or go to a different place or anything, they can create their own kindred, create their own thing based on experience, and then as I was talking about at the beginning, they can take this information and move it forward so we can build off of the previous half generation's success and not have to reinvent the wheel every single time. I'm fortunate that I have a lot of friends that have been around the community for a while, up to 40 years or more in some cases. And it's really nice because we have a relationship where we don't always agree on anything, but we at least agree that we can communicate about it like adults. The truth is, because there's not a lot of us, or at least not that communicate very regularly, so it's nice to have an ear to bounce an idea off of or to ask a question to that maybe has other strong points and weak points in the faith than we do. It's nice to have that little bit of a coalition of friends that have been around a while and kind of know the people and kind of know the landscape and the good actors and the bad actors and that kind of a thing. It's very handy to have. So eventually that's not going to be there if we keep resetting every half generation. So this is sort of an attempt to let's keep moving forward and building on the generation that came before. There will come a time, I am sure, at some point in the future where everything that I put on this page is either the accepted standard or a running joke. And I have no way to interpret that at this stage in our creation, because all I could do was learn from those that were before me, discard a bunch of stuff that was probably put here for the wrong reasons, and then develop my own path forward. That does not, I have to say, it does not revolve around the Viking Age. Now we do enjoy our clothing and our history, and I don't think there's anything wrong with dressing and doing that. I think that really brings your mindset into the faith, but we have to understand that we're not living in the same environment that caused that in the first place. So we can't pretend that in order to honor the gods we have to do it the way that it was done so many years ago. We are allowed to develop this faith. Even, I don't know, like maybe take a look back and just look at how progressive and open and how the communication and the ideology of the Christian church now, like pick a church. I don't really care which one. Pick Catholicism or Protestants or whatever, and then compare it, like really compare it. Not necessarily the scripture, but compare the actions of the individuals back to the Viking Age. And you'll see that the entire outlook and the processes of the church has changed considerably in 1,000 years. It's only reasonable to think that had we not been pushed underground, we would have also evolved along those same lines. I don't want to say that there's no direct lines all the way back to that, because I don't know. I don't know every person that practices this faith on the planet. I just know that I don't know of any direct lines that went from the end of the Viking Age and continually pass it down through their family, either runers or any type of magical workings or even just heathen ritual practices. I don't know that there's any unbroken lines. And that's sad, but we can't look back there and say, wow, I really wish we would have done things differently 500, 700, 900 years ago. We would be able to have something now. Now is now. We need to create it. We know enough about our gods that we know how they can help us and what we can do to make them happy and how we can build a mutually beneficial relationship, just like being a steward of a land. And you can build a relationship with your own land doing those sort of things too. We know how to build a relationship with our gods. We just don't know how they did it. But it's okay. We can still build a relationship with those same gods in a different way, and that doesn't make it inauthentic. Authenticity is in your heart. Like, you can be authentic about your practice, and then we can stay sort of, it's okay to be romantic about, the Viking Age, because that's where it ended, where the practice ended, not the culture. So the culture continued, and it evolved, and it grew, and it became progressive, and it has, it's not what it was 1,000 years ago any more than we are what we were when this country was founded. Of course, if you don't know, I'm talking from an American standpoint. So we've grown a lot. we've overcome a lot of challenges, both as a pagan community and as a country in general. And I don't think that we should abandon our pride, our pride in our own country, in our own place. These are our land whites. These aren't, I'm not making offerings out here to the land whites in my ancestral home near Elverum, Norway. I've been there, but, and I've made offerings to them, but not here. Here, my offerings are to the whites here on my land in Idaho. The ones that help me, the ones that live in and around my territory, the one whose territory I live in and around. So, without really dragging that out too much, the point is we live here in America, and we can be proud of where we are, and we are our own discipline of Norse paganism. The other countries, they have their disciplines. They have their Fornsidere. They have their Asatru. They have these other organizations that they're nationally recognized. People are a part of them. They grow, they develop, they learn new things, they implement it into their program. We don't have that. So we can build that. We can have that but we got to first understand that we are different heathens than our European and Scandinavian counterparts. We love them. We really do. In my friends over there, I have lots of friends over there, especially in Norway. And I love them dearly, and I wish them all the best in the world, especially those that practice, because they don't all practice. Not all the ones I know, obviously. I'm not really willing to give up the American me for the Norwegian me. It's not even really possible. My family left Norway in the early 1700s. There's no way for me to catch up on the culture. I can learn the language. I can cook some of their food. I kind of like the same things, and I have, we're all a little infatuated with our ancestry. If you know your ancestry, we're always a little infatuated with where our people came from. Those connections have to be, if you want to reconnect with your own homeland. And I'm following, honestly, this podcast kind of took a little bit of a left turn, but I'm really just kind of following the conversations that we've been having publicly on the internet, on all the other platforms, and even on my Discord. We've been having these conversations, not only with natives in Scandinavia, but about them and with them, and them amongst each other and us amongst each other, just having a nice little conversation about where do we lie on this big spectrum. And I say we as in the American, pagans and heathens. And we lie firmly in America. We are allowed to enjoy our place. There are things that we'll never understand. Like, I don't know the soil conditions for growing in Elverum, Norway. I know the soil conditions for growing food here where I live. I don't know the game patterns. I don't even know all the flora and fauna. It's interesting when you visit foreign countries, especially ones that you're like super interested in or even infatuated with. It's very interesting because there's so many unique things that you experience, from the shape of the road signs to the simple organization of a small grocery store. It's set up so much differently than an American grocery store. So you'll find that when you walk into an American grocery store, what you're going to see is a lot of garbage in the front. Flowers, probably a Starbucks, a bunch of stuff that you don't want or need, but really, really kind of tickles the bells in your head that says, oh, that's cool, that's neat, I need one of those, oh, that looks delicious. There's a lot of that. When you walk into, at least in my experience, a small grocery store in Scandinavia and even some places in Europe, you don't see that. You walk right into the produce department, or at least adjacent to it. You walk into where the good food is, the human food, and then everything else is kind of tucked around in the back because they want you to be able to come in, get what you need, and go back out. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think that their thing is any more special or perfect than ours. I do think the American people are manipulated heavily by our own powers that be, and that's a part of that manipulation, more of a corporate manipulation that they might not see in some of those Scandinavian and European countries because the towns are smaller. They're not quite as big box store as we have going on here. They don't have the experience of a team of psychologists to help design the front store display. Like, you think I'm kidding, but I'm not. That's real. Ultimately, it's really not about that. It's about the subtle differences in the actual living conditions and culture that people experience. Like, I know that in Norway, Norwegians have zero tolerance for people to say, I'm cold or I didn't dress warm enough. Zero tolerance for that. At least in my experience with Norway, there's zero tolerance. The point is that culturally it's so much different that we can't just say, oh, wow, my ancestry DNA test came back and I'm 12% Norwegian, so viva la homeland, and now I'm going to dress like wear the Norwegian Flag Day or Constitution Day costumes, the traditional, I don't even know what they're called. I should, but I don't, because I don't live there and it's not a part of my culture. I do send texts to my Norwegian friends on their Constitution Day and tell them congratulations. But as a side note, just so you know, the Norwegian Constitution is the second oldest working written constitution on Earth, modeled after our Constitution. So, and this is 16th of May in 1814. So yeah, 1814, we took a little trip along with General Jackson and the mighty Mississippi. So when that was happening here, the Norwegians were writing their constitution or ratifying it and adopting their constitution over there based on our model. In fact, from what I understand, even the red, white, and blue of their flag is based on ours. Of course, they have essentially the same flag as all the Scandinavian countries. So we're connected to them as Americans, and we don't need to break our American connection in order to reconnect to Norway. We are allies. We are friends. We are, in a lot of cases, family. And somebody had pointed out today that there are more Norwegian ancestors or descendants living in America today than there are people, Norwegians, in Norway. So that tells you that there was a mass exodus throughout history, and then they came here, and of course around, we know, Minnesota Vikings and whatnot. But we know that in Minnesota, a lot of Scandinavians settled there and various other places and created their own communities. And a lot of those communities held on to those traditions from the days. And like I said, at least with my ancestry, the early 1700s, and they held on to those traditions and they developed new ones, American traditions, and they evolved and they incorporated some of their Scandinavian traditions into it. But even if you grew up in that strict Scandinavian household in Minnesota, the things you do are going to be different than a Scandinavian household anywhere in all of Scandinavia. They just are. And if we can just understand that we do things our own way and we can do it unapologetically, we can do this the American way. These are our gods too. And I think that most Scandinavians would agree with me on that. And if they don't, then they don't have to. It's okay. We're on different sides of the pond. Now, knowing that we're Americans and we do things differently, we have, of course, there's government intervention at some level, because you have to do, if you can do a 501c3 and get these certain authorization, then you can ordain and do those various different things. But that's all sort of government control things. And I'm not concerned about that. I'm not concerned if you can have a certificate of ordainment from us. Like, that's probably not going to happen. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the future holds. But it's not a goal on my list right now. The goals on my list are to perform this series, and let's get these starter godis. Like, let's get them in the hot seat and get them doing the job, the basic job, and get them, competent at their craft, because the world needs more godis. So that should be a t-shirt, right? The world needs more godis. My wife's going to get mad that I left that in here. By the way, we have a Teespring, so if you want some Northwoods Kindred swag, we got that going on too. Link is in our link tree. Check it out. So that's the models. I went, kind of round and round there. I hope you enjoyed just hanging out and talking about it. But that was the models that I'm looking for the video series. And a lot of where the series goes, because we're only going to shoot a couple episodes at a time, a lot of where the series goes and the twists and turns that it takes are going to be dependent on the questions that I get, both on my Discord, on TikTok, Instagram. I don't get much interaction on Twitter, so forget that. But here, of course, in the comments, and then anywhere where you hear the podcast in the comments, those are the places where, in my Discord, yes, get on Discord and come talk to me personally. But those are the things that are going to drive the curriculum for this video series that we're going to put together. And another thing that I'm going to do, and I know that this might, I'll just say it and I'll let you feel about it how you feel about it. So everything I'm going to do, I'm going to be making, not everything, but a lot of times, I'm going to be making a handout, a printout, a couple of pages that I can use to reference while I'm shooting the video so that I can stay on track according to how the program ends up developing. So as I make those notebook pages, essentially, I'm going to put those up for sale for a digital download. Idea being that you can watch the video or download it first, print off this paperwork, and then you can follow along with the paperwork so that you get a little bit more out of the video. But don't think that me making a downloadable flyer is going to be necessary for you to understand the content of what we're talking about. There'll be probably a little bit more detail, and you can certainly, I would suggest, print it out and then take notes on it, because I'll say things, because I tend to ramble, I'll say things that are not on the page, and then there are things on the page that I won't necessarily say because I either make the point another way or it's too redundant to keep saying it over and over. But there's a resource there that you can take, put it in a little binder, and then you have your little book, your little training book, and it'll have flyers on, it'll have information on how to do various different things like performing these rituals, or how to, maybe some various different modules for a wedding, talking about how big of a presence they want, or how deep you want to go in this thing. So all that information will eventually come out, and it can all be filed away in those nice little packages. But you don't have to print anything off. I'll offer the prints because it's a shortcut for people who either don't want to take notes, or can't take notes, or don't care to. But it's a shortcut to that, one that you can still store up the information and build your own little godi manual from it. It's also a good way for those that want to contribute to the project to help us, support the project. I'm sure that there's going to be resources that we're going to have to spend money on. We do every month here anyway with hosting services and that kind of, those kind of things, with all of the other things we have going on. So those are the sort of things that I can do that provides a source of, if people want to support it, they can, but it doesn't make it essential for completion of the course. So I hope I can edit that down into something that sounds like a coherent thought. But that's the whole idea behind doing the flyers, and I think that I'll be able to put them together fairly quickly in a way that's going to be beneficial to your outline or your notebook, and then maybe down the road we'll be able to lump things together in packages for download too, and probably give away a few free ones and that kind of stuff. We've already got multiple free downloads on our website for flyers for how to do rituals and some various other things. So certainly tell you to go check out the website. That's survivalhardwarellc.com, and then just kind of slide around and find them digital downloads, and then download what's there, because what I have there now is free. And I know it's helping people because I get a lot of feedback for that. Not only do I get feedback when I get notifications when people download that thing every single day, but when I get notifications when people send me emails or connect with me on some other platform and say, hey, thank you for that. It really, really got me out of a pinch, or it really saved my butt, or my godi bailed and this is all I had, so thanks for helping me out. So I get that stuff a lot too. So I don't always thank everybody for that interaction, but it really is helpful to me when you interact with me on YouTube here in the comments, hitting the like and certainly subscribing, and the other ways that you interact with the channel or with our program with the Northwoods Kindred by going on Discord and TikTok. All those things are really, really appreciated, because that's what lets me know what the needs are in the community, because it's hard for me to fill a need if I don't know what the need is. So there are times on these platforms where everything kind of goes dark, and I'm like, I don't really have my ear on the community right now, so I don't know what to make a video about. So in those cases, we tend to just grasp for straws and do a craft or something like that. But I would much rather be making videos that you need in order to make your kindred more functional for whatever your goal is. And the best way to get that is give me the information that I need by telling me how I'm helping or how I could help better. that's almost like a start or a foot in the door of the process of developing a community. And a community looks a lot different now than it used to. It used to be close proximity, sharing resources, that kind of a thing. Our communities are in a lot of cases, digitally based now, and we can still engage with each other. We can have conversations. We can settle disputes. We can share resources, at least digital resources. We can do a lot of that as a community digitally. But there's still no replacement for coming together, pressing flesh, shaking hands and kissing babies and doing ritual together with people that you love and care for. There's still no, there's no replacement for that. There can't be a replacement for that. And now to usher this along a little bit more. And the reason that this video kind of reflects the next video that's coming out, has kind of got a lot of the same information, is I really kind of want to double tap, because I know that everybody that's listening to the podcast isn't watching the podcast, and everybody that's watching the podcast isn't watching the other videos. So I really kind of want to just blast it out on as many platforms as I have to able to do it, so I can get as much interaction as possible up front on the godi training thing. So one of the first things I'll say is, who authorized me to train godi? And the answer, the very spirited answer, is no one. No one authorized me to do this. No one gave me permission to help train kindred leadership. And there are people, I know this, that will have heartburn with that. They will say you have to get certified through A, B, or C. And you have to understand, I understand this because I've been here for 30 years, but some of those organizations look pretty well founded. They look pretty sturdy, when in a lot of cases it's a house of cards. And the only authorization that they have is one that they've applied for and got granted, and then they've developed on their own based on a lot of their own UPG and their own research, and then they train their clergy for their organization. And even if you went to one of those organizations and you said, okay, I want to take your course, and you take your course and you get the certificate, and you're now a certified, bona fide, Spotified godi on their organizational platform, and you go out and you do something like this and give it away, yeah, it's getting revoked. You might even get some threats. But I have no homage to anyone. My allegiance belongs to my family, my kindred, and my people, my tribe. So I can do this, and I don't have to suffer any of those consequences. And you can take the information, and if you want to go to those guys and you want to pay that money and you want to do that thing, man, I'm all for it. I even tried to do it. I'm all for it. Go do the thing, get the cert. That's great. But there's still probably a thing or three that you can learn here, and it's free. So why not, right? Might as well listen to it. Might as well share it with other people who are going through the same thing. The case of the disappearing godi. You don't want that. You certainly don't want to be dropped in the hot seat the weekend before a gathering where you're stuck doing the ritual and you don't understand the ritual at all. So we're making resources for that. So I don't want to keep talking in circles here. I just wanted to get this information out. I want to let you know that it's coming. I hope that you're excited for it. I'm certainly excited for it. I've been talking about it and planning for it and writing outlines and everything for quite some time now. And finally, we're just like, we're just dragging our feet. We should just do it. As ugly and raw as it's going to be at the beginning, work with us, bear with us. We're working on it. I'm going to write better videos, and I'm going to trim down the extra kind of rambling that I have a tendency to do in order to get them really streamlined. But that's a process. It takes a little bit of time, and I really hope that you bear with me and stick around for that. And I just want to kind of reiterate one more time, for those that want to say that I'm doing it wrong, or my thing doesn't align with yours, that is perfectly okay for you to say. I am still in your corner. If you are a heathen and I am a heathen, I am still here to help you develop better practices for your connection to the gods. Now, politics aside, because politics, left and right, man, keep that stuff to yourself. If you want to engage with us and you want to interact with me and we want to have conversations, we want to talk, I don't want to know your politics. I don't want to know how you feel about all of this kind of stuff. I want respectful interaction, and we can work together. I just want to say thank you for of course, being a part of this, I don't know, experiment, I guess it is, because before we were doing this, there wasn't anybody doing what we're doing. Of course, there's other personalities out there doing these sort of things, but we're having a ball and we're engaging, and I have made so many friends this past year in the community all around the world. I've made more friends in this last year doing this YouTube channel and the TikTok and the other adjacent socials. I've made more friends in the community, digital, but some physical as well, than I would have ever imagined. And certainly rivals the amount of people that I've met in the community over the past 30 or close to 30 years. So that's a statement. That's important. This model of joining together online is very important. We just have to resist the urge to make enemies out of each other. We have to go into these conversations with an open mind and an open heart and be willing to accept that not everybody thinks the same. Not everybody's going to do the same thing. Not everybody's going to place the same value on the same pieces and parts. And that's important to understand. That sort of, if you're that person who's kind of an outlier and you do things extremely different than everyone else, you'll get no judgment here. Okay? If you can engage with our content, we'll engage the best we can. I'm not overly familiar with a lot of different heathen paths, not like I am with Asatru, but I'll help where I can, and I can certainly tell you how we do it here, and if that works for you, or if there's some pieces and parts of that you can take and build it into your own practice, run with that. Like, I'm all about that. Do that, because I do that, and I watch some of your stuff, and I see things, and I'm like, wow, why didn't I ever think of that? That's amazing. That's beautiful. Let's take it, reorganize it, and then make it our own. We do that too, and you should be doing that. Everybody should be doing that. I hope that you enjoyed this podcast. I love you for being here. I always will. Please come back next week and look for those videos that we're going to have popping up on YouTube here really, really soon. I will talk to you next week. I am Bodvar, the chieftain and godi of the Northwoods Kindred. Þórr, viki, my friends.